after I moved to Dubai with no job in hand. I resigned from my last thing. Literally out of nowhere, I get this offer from InDrive being like, hey, there's this unicorn. They want to build a platform for female entrepreneurs. Are you interested? And I literally was like, this job doesn't exist. Like, this is a scam.
Isabella Smith, who runs the Aurora Tech Award, the only global award backing female founders in emerging tech markets.
Ryan, I swear to God, I looked for months. There is not another job like this on the market.
Your podcast only had about 4 episodes, and from what I don't understand, that's what actually helped you land your role at InDrive.
4 episodes, and that's what got me this job. To anyone listening, I did not succeed that podcast. Like, if anything, I really did not. I unsucceeded it. But thank God I did it, because I wouldn't have gotten this job. He was basically like, you should be grateful for the opportunity that you are being given and the fact that you have a salary, and basically like, you're not getting a raise, right? Which I'm like, so this has nothing to do, like, you didn't state one performance metric, right?
Because most people at that age would have stayed quiet. What you were thinking to go into get headhunted and double your salary. Only 2% of venture capital goes to female founders globally. That's right, 2%. Meanwhile, there are women in Nigeria, Pakistan, Kenya, and Brazil building the next category-defining companies, and most of the world has never even heard of them. That's where today's guest comes in, Isabella Smith, who runs the Aurora Tech Award, the only global award backing female founders in emerging tech markets. In 2025, she reviewed over 3,000 applications from 127 different countries, and only picked the top 3%. Now, Isabella isn't Gen Z. She's a millennial, but here's where her story needs to be heard. She's built her entire career by ignoring the traditional playbook. She studied law at the London School of Economics, realized it wasn't really for her, so instead of following that safe traditional path, she co-founded a social enterprise helping refugees find jobs. She then joined a tech startup that grew from 20 to over 100 people and got headhunted by a venture capital firm, doubling her salary, and all while starting a podcast called The Day I. Welcome to the Refresh Gen ZEO Playbook Podcast. I'm Rayan, and today Isabella's going to break down what separates the top 3% of founders from everyone else, the biggest mistakes she sees in pitches, and how she's dealt with feeling too young in the room she was in. Isabella, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Ryan, thank you for having me. It's probably the most comprehensive introduction I've had so far. A very researched host. Yeah, things are good. We've had a strong start to the year with Aurora, so no complaints so far.
Thank you. Isabella, you joined InDrive to run the Aurora Tech Award, and since you've taken it on, it's grown from 1,000 to 3,000 applications from 127 different countries. And that's not a small jump. So what did you actually do to scale it that fast across that many regions? And I'm curious, while looking at those applications, around how many of those founders are actually Gen Z?
Yeah, so how did we grow Aurora? Fundamentally, the opportunity was always there. That's why I joined, right? Which was that there's this massive pool of both underrepresented and undercapitalized talent in the form of female founders in emerging markets. And no real platform, whether a fund, whether social media, whatever, was, I think, giving a spotlight to the opportunity that was there. And to be honest, one of the big hacks that actually drove our growth was the lists that we produced. Because being Aurora, we were getting applications from founders either way, right? Like, we have free money, you should apply. And so when I joined with the team, we kind of were like, why don't we use all of this data that we're getting and these companies that we're evaluating and just share them, right? Let's say these are the top 30 founders in emerging markets. Of that top 30, these are the top 10 in Nigeria. These are the top 5 in Colombia. And so we started posting those lists on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And naturally, right, what happens is everybody that's part of that list that's tagged will like that list. All of their friends that are generally also entrepreneurs will like those lists. Then those people are also seen by investors, will like those lists. And so you create this like network effect. And so you're probably thinking, okay, but you guys are so global, but also local. And yeah, that comes from the fact that we somehow penetrated all of these local markets by having those country specific lists, because suddenly, you know, if the venture ecosystem is small wherever you go, like everybody had suddenly seen the name Aurora. And then with repetition, right? So we have the top 30, we have the top 10, you know, we do other things. Suddenly we're in the circle of those people like more than once a year. And that created a lot of organic followers for us, a lot of credibility for us, a lot of trust in the brand, because actually the founders we were platforming were like the best in those regions. And also, you know, behind that, we were showing the people behind the businesses, which is not just like the numbers and not just this and that, but like actually the woman behind and why they showed that business. And I've spoken to so many founders now, and all of them have said, like, you do it really differently. Like, it feels like you actually want to know us. It's like you actually believe in us, and we really do. And so a huge part of our budget goes to creating that content, and the other part of that budget goes to actually finding those founders. And so the short answer to your question is, I think we grew not just because there was a gap in the market, but because we used the network effect of people wanting to actually like support their fellow founders and their fellow friends in these different countries.
Before we dive into Aurora and everything else you built, I wanted to say that's a super interesting way of, like, I would consider free marketing. So, and I also want to know who Isabella was before all of this. Like, if I were to look at your career, it doesn't follow a very linear path, or like safe path, I would say. So were you always the type of person to just trust your gut, even when you were younger?
Yeah, my career has been very non-intentional, I would say. So to answer you, the second question you asked is like, was I a gut kind of person? No, I come from a half Iranian, half English family, and the plan was for me to be a lawyer. So for 21 years, I studied super hard and I did all the things, and, you know, I studied law and whatever. And then in this my second year of university, I realized, man, like, I'm not going to be a very good lawyer. It just did not come naturally to me. And then when I did things like internships, I just wasn't very good at it and I didn't enjoy it. And so in my third year, I was faced with this thing where I was like, I'm not going to get a job in this industry. Like, I don't fit the profile that they want. And then two, I don't want a job in this industry because frankly, like, I hated the way I was seeing how people were working, how they were treated. Anyway, so in my third year, I ended up kind of doing everything. Like, I was assistant. I was like on the desk reception in the university gym. I was working as like a PA for this like asset management guy that had his little boutique thing. But one of the things I did was I joined the local accelerator part of London School of Economics called Kickstart. And I had never ventured into startups or tech. I didn't even know what a startup was. I was like, and I ended up meeting a founder there who had built a legal tech company. He was a serial entrepreneur, and we had done a pitch day. And so he'd seen me pitch. And thankfully, because I wanted to be a lawyer for all these years, I was very good, and I am very good at public speaking. I'm terrible at maths, but I'm very good at public speaking comparatively. And basically, I said to him, I was like, look, like, you have a legal tech business. I studied law, like, you know, and ended up getting a job with him, basically going to different like pitch events in the UK because he was being invited to pitch like a lot and he couldn't be in everywhere at once. And he was like, you just need to go and repeat my script. So I was literally at the age of 21, just like traveling around the UK, talking to founders about things that I didn't understand, but I was pretty compelling because I memorized the scripts and all these things. Anyway, so that I like survived that because that company grew. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just working really hard. So what you ended up having is I was very good at like pitching at a random event or sending an email newsletter or hosting a webinar, but I didn't have a strategy. I was like, I'm not a marketer. I'm not a community person. Like, what even is this? But I had a good personal brand. But this was before the age of like LinkedIn influencers and like influencers generally. Like, it wasn't as much of a thing like 10 years ago. And so I had worked in that job. I was not getting paid enough. I felt like I didn't have a manager for like the entirety of it. I learned a lot, but I wasn't, anyways. So then because of the personal brand that I had, which made me seem a lot older and a lot more like knowledgeable than I was, I got approached for a head of marketing job for a fund, which was a corporate venture capital fund backed by Telefonica, which is one of the largest telco companies in the world. Again, I was 22 at this point, I think. Yeah, no, I was 23. And I went for this job. It was like double my salary. It was a huge title. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this. But me being me, like, I blagged it, right? Public speaking is something I'm good at. So I had a few interviews, of which one of the interviewees literally said, like, you're too inexperienced for this job. And I basically went on to list out all the reasons I was not. And even if I was going to outwork everyone else. And to my surprise, like, I got the job. Anyway, so I fell into venture capital. And again, that job and everything that happened, there's a whole different podcast episode, but like, I was like, okay. And then basically I got to the age of like 26 and I was like, right, I think I'm pretty good at like working. I don't really know what my speciality is, but I've come this far. I need to care about what I do. And so I started going to recruiters being like, I want a job with great people, a great purpose. And like, I make money. Like, I don't want to work for a charity. And lo and behold, a year later, after I moved to Dubai with no job in hand, I'd resigned from my last thing. Literally out of nowhere, I get this offer from InDrive being like, hey, there's this unicorn. They want to build a platform for female entrepreneurs. Are you interested? And I literally was like, this job doesn't exist. Like, this is a scam. And so, Ryan, to answer your question, this is the first job I have ever taken that was completely driven by my gut and my belief that I was going to have a job that fit all my boxes. And I waited, like I turned down other jobs. I didn't, it's not like I had that many savings. Like it was a big risk and it happened. And so this is the first time in my career I can tangibly say I came in, it was like this, and I'm here now. And as you've said, by the numbers that we have, this is where we are. And all of that has been enabled by the fact that I had such a vast career, which means I understand marketing, I understand sales, I understand venture capital, but I'm not technical. I'm not a technical marketer. I'm not a technical investor, but it means I can hire the right people for those things. So very full circle for me, but non-linear and definitely not intentional until probably end of last year. Yeah.
Outside of Aurora, you used to run a podcast called The Day I, where you used to ask women one question. Tell me about a day where you truly backed yourself. So now I want to flip that question on you. What's your day? Like, what's a moment you look back and think on, that's when I really backed myself?
I think we all have more than one day. I think the day, I have like probably three, but the day that's most relevant to you and your audience is having the balls to be like, I literally going to recruiters and saying, I want a job with people, purpose, profit. I mean, I literally had a recruiter be like, what are you talking about? And one of those recruiters had told me, so you want to move to Dubai, you want a promotion, and you want to kind of shift industries a little bit. She's like, you can't do all three, let alone one. She's like, if you're moving, expect a pay cut, expect this, expect that. Funny fact, that recruiter is the one that ended up coming to me with my job. And
What?
yeah, very full circle moment. And I think, like I have no she and I have a great relationship now, but like, yeah, it was, but thank God I didn't listen to her or to others that were saying similar things. I in that process, it's not easy to get a job, even if you have a great CV. And I learned that. I was humbled. And I had turned down another head of marketing job, which I knew I was going to hate. Like I knew it when I was interviewing for it. I was like, I'm so not excited by this. And like, man, like you really don't want to start a job and like hate your life. Like that's really not ideal. And I turned it down. And I remember my partner at the time was like, basically like, you should be a bit more realistic with what you want.
Like, a bit more grateful.
Yeah, you should be grateful in this market to get a job, 100%. And I was like, no, like I want a job that I love. And it's hard, man, when you're applying and you can't see when that next job is going to come. And all I kept saying to myself is people, purpose, profit, people. But I didn't know what that job was. And literally I land in Dubai 2 weeks from my last job, the notice being finished, and this job comes. And everyone asked me, like, how did you find this job? Right? Because it's so rogue. It's such a bizarre job spec. And I tell people, I manifested it. I know how stupid that sounds. I get how annoying that is. But Ryan, I swear to God, I looked for months. There is not another job like this on the market. There is not another job that pays me the amount that it does to literally go and invest in female entrepreneurs and build this platform with the autonomy that like it doesn't exist. And so thank God for me not settling for what I think I deserved. Because if you don't dream for yourself, if you dream realistically based on what other people say, no one's going to come to you and be like, oh, I think your dream is too small. Like no one is going to say that to you. So if you limit yourself, then that's your limitation. And that was a huge learning for me that I can talk from hindsight. Like I can actually say it worked. Obviously, if I didn't have this job, I wouldn't say this. And so that would be the day that the year that I backed myself. And I was like, this will happen. You will do this. So yeah.
Isabella, you were early in your career, fresh out of LSE, working at a startup, when you asked for a raise and your boss basically told you to be grateful for what you had. So instead of accepting it, you got headhunted and double your salary. So walk me through the experience, like, once again, since you told me. And, like, I want to know what was going on in your head at that time. Because most people at that age would have stayed quiet. So I know you've answered this question, but I want to know the experience of, like, what you were thinking to go in to get headhunted and double your salary.
I'm very impressed by like the research you've done because that is an old story of mine. Very fair to you and your team. That's impressive. Yeah, okay. So the story goes, basically, I was a year into working for this startup, right? And they were backed by Index. They had a lot. This wasn't like a failing startup. Like we had serious tier one investors. I knew how much they were hiring, like basically other older white men for. I was 21, but man, I was working so much. I was traveling the country. I was running their, bear in mind, head of marketing left within 2 weeks of me joining. So I took on sending their newsletters, managing their webinars, growing their community, going to events. Like, and I'm not saying I was driving sales, but I was playing a big part to the top of funnel that the company had, right? And I was taking on a lot of responsibilities. Bear in mind, when I joined, they paid me in pounds. And this is where, like, please don't ever, like, undersell yourself, whoever's listening to this, because I did, and it was stupid. I went in and I was like, oh, yeah, like, it would be, like, nice to get, like, 27K. 27K, you can't live on that in London. But I was like, oh, like, I'm getting a job. I'm so lucky, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's 27K. And once you benchmark yourself there, like, it's really hard once you're in a company to climb up, especially when you're young. And so I was like, okay, well, I've been working here for a year. I'm doing quite a lot. I haven't had a raise. I don't have a bonus. And there was what was his title? I don't remember. He was like, I think it's Chief Commercial Officer. And he and I didn't get on super well because I have always been not afraid to speak to superiors, not rudely, but like if I think something's stupid or if I don't understand something, I'm just going to ask the question. And that comes from law. That comes from debating for so many years. That comes from speaking in front of thousands of people. And that also comes from a mother who like raised me to like not be like quiet, right?
It's natural. It's instinct.
Yeah, I didn't question it. If I was in a board meeting with like, with the CEO, I wasn't scared of asking him a question, like never crossed my mind. And it's actually one of the reasons I've been able to have such high titles at my age, because part of that is actually having the confidence to talk to others, right? Anyway, and so he and I were butting heads and we went through this process for like 4 months where I was like, I need a raise, like as in like, and he basically said to me, and I came with all the arguments and this is what I've done, and and we went on a walk. I don't dislike the guy because he tried to help me in his way, but fundamentally he had never dreamed in the way that I had dreamed. And I think he thought I was being arrogant. And so we went on this walk and he said to me, he literally said to me, he was like, when I was your age, I was only earning this. And Bella, sometimes this is the gist of it. This isn't like word for word. Yeah, he was basically like, you should be grateful for the opportunity that you are being given and the fact that you have a salary, and basically like you're not getting a raise, right? Which I'm like, so this has nothing to do, like you didn't say one performance metric, right? You haven't set a benchmark against which, and I think he just thought, he thought I was arrogant. He really thought, and he and I butted heads a lot, like from the moment he joined. Because I was a bit like, you're coming in as Chief Commercial Officer telling me how to do marketing, but like, it's just me. I've got no manager. Like explain to me why you're right kind of thing. Anyway, so I then went to the head of sales and I was basically like, you look like a good manager. I want to apply to be in your team. Because immediately, if I had moved into sales, even though I'd be working less, I was going to earn 35, 36K. So I was like, I'm fine, I'm changing team. So I said to Adam, I was like, cool, I'm moving to sales. So I interviewed for sales. That manager, who I still know today, Rob, ended up becoming my mentor. He and I have a great relationship. He's like the only manager I've ever had, basically. And I ended up working for them. Yeah, no. He's the only one I can say he was my manager. Like I wanted to deliver for him and he knows that. Like I wanted to prove to him, like I'm good at what I do, because he was that kind of manager. Like he really, like it's like having a good coach. Like you wanted to perform. And so I went to him, I learned sales, I learned from him. I was there for 6 months. And I told Adam, I was like, I'm going to double my salary. He's like, yeah, sure. Obviously, 6 months later, I think I was manifesting without realizing. 6 months later, I get this opportunity, head of marketing. And I get the job. And you should imagine how happy I was to go to Adam and be like, by the way, like head of marketing, right? Like at that age. But bear in mind, this guy had only just hit, like he was like, however old, like, and the amount I was earning. And I literally was like, and by that point, so it was like my starting salary there was going to be like 60K, which again is not like groundbreaking. But for me at that age, considering I had been earning like 35, it's a huge change. I could live in London, and I was so happy. I was like, and again, thank God I didn't listen to him and his like really closed off stupid views about ageism and all these things. And Rob, my manager and my friend now, he was amazing. He was like, he literally, he always says this to me. He says this to me now. He's like, God, he's like, if anybody was going to do it, Bella, like it was going to be you. And even now he's like, I'm always so proud because, I keep jumping. Like I don't jump little bit. Like I keep doing this doubling thing. And it's so nice to have someone that's actually in your corner versus someone that like holds you down. And
exactly.
Yeah, and if someone is telling you you're dreaming too big and you're arrogant, you're never gonna convince that person. And I do think the fastest way to grow your income at this point in time is not loyalty to companies, it's by moving jobs. And it's tiring to move jobs. It's like really exhausting because every time the first 6 months you have to like kill yourself. But
you go prove yourself.
But it's so much easier to, most companies will give you a 10% raise, maybe 20% if you're lucky. But like, you change companies, you're doubling, you're tripling. Like it, and I'm not saying everything should be for money, but I'm saying like for your worth monetarily, it's always going to come from moving jobs. So yeah. Anyway, so that's the story, and like that's what happened, and that's also what got me. And then I'll close off because I know I'm spending time on this. But when I then got the head of marketing job, I nearly didn't ask for 60K. Like I had a boyfriend at the time. Thank God I had a man in my life, because women don't do this enough. And he was like, "You need to ask for more." I was so uncomfortable. I was like, "Oh my God, they're not gonna take me. They're gonna rescind the offer. I don't even care." And again, I did this thing where I was like, "No, I'm so lucky they're giving me this title. Like, thank God I asked, because I didn't deserve any less, right?" And then here in Dubai, when I moved to this job, is the first time I was literally like, no, like I asked for what I was 100% worth. So it's a muscle you have to flex, and you have to just not be scared of the reaction they have, because like they're never going to turn around to you and be like, you should ask for more, right? So you have to fight for that yourself, I think.
I think you're reading our script, because our next question is like, you became the head of marketing of a VC firm in your mid-20s. How did you deal with feeling too young for the rooms you were in the VC firm?
Really simply. So my kind of rule with work, and I always have imposter syndrome. I have never started a job and not thought, what if I can't do this? But every job I've started, and this is not me being arrogant, but like every job I have done, I have always left with respect from my peers of being like, Bella is good. Like, because I work hard, right? So my rule is the same rule that I had at school, right? What would I do at school? First 2 months of school, I'm always the person to put my hand up. I'm always the person to know, do all the homework, whatever. Because it means that when you don't, the teacher's never going to think you haven't, right? So it's the same with work. Like I kill myself. I'm the yes person for the first 6 months so that they know like I'm good. Like I'm on it, like I take on extra things, I'm working hours, and I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying I'm not saying that's how you have to do it. That's how my brother definitely does not do this. That's how I do it, because everyone's like, holy shit, like she's good.
Hard work.
And then yeah, you build track record. Like it, once somebody gets a great piece of work from you, they're like, whereas if you give them a bad piece of work, it's so hard to come back from that, because people have pre-assumptions. Exactly. Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard. And obviously like it's not all just working, and like I've delivered stuff, and then you can take the foot off the pedal. And so to answer your question of how do I deal with the age, I just work harder than others. And I show them that, and also I never talk about my age. Like I never tell people my age, because I had a problem with, when I actually moved to my head of marketing job at Wyra, I had inherited 2 men who were older than me by a significant amount of years, and they figured out how old I was, which was 23, and they made my life incredibly difficult, because they hated that I was their boss, that they hadn't gotten the job, that who was I to tell them? And I tried everything. I got those guys raises. I was so nice to them. I covered their work. Like some people, and they ended up both being, one being fired and one, thank God, left, but it jades you, because the moment people think of, they're like, how could you know anything at that age, right? So I also, I'm not saying this right, but I really try and not talk about my age in the work context, because I don't want that to play against me until after I've proven myself, right? I don't mind 6 months later that you know how old I am, but I don't want you to know now.
In the beginning, you don't want to know. You don't want to.
Yeah. And then the other thing I do is, and this is I learned at Wyra, is my God, it's not enough to work hard. You have to network. Like I spend a lot of time building relationships with people within the company, because the moment you want something, whether it's a promotion, whether it's a favor for Aurora, whatever it is, it doesn't happen if you haven't built that relationship. And I didn't realize that in my second job. I thought, oh, I work hard. It doesn't work that way. Politics in business matter, especially if you're a young manager. And so I spent a lot of time just building relationships within the business. And I think that's something that everyone should, like, I always think, okay, who's the person that I'm gonna need favor from? And of course it sounds a bit transactional, but it's we're talking the CFO, the CTO, the head of product, like, and again, nobody messages those people, especially in a hierarchical business. And so when you're like, hey, by the way,
but you have a lot, like,
balls. Yeah. And everyone says, like, especially in InDrive, they're like, wait, you messaged who? And I'm like, yeah, but you also don't message like an idiot. You say like, hey, I know that you work on this. In the same way you prepared this episode for this podcast, which is evidently prepared, I prepare for my meetings. It's like, hey, I know that you're working on this. Aurora's doing this. I think there's a synergy here. I'd love to chat. That's how you get that call. Not, hey, let's grab a coffee. Like, that's not interesting to them. Mm-hmm. And then again, on that call, you impress them. And then behind closed doors, people meet. Oh, hey, have you met Bella, she's the head of Aurora. And yeah, she's really good, isn't she? That's what happens. And I think that's really important as a young woman to build those bridges. Yeah.
Your podcast only had about 4 episodes, and from what I understand, that's what actually helped you land your role at InDrive. So, what did those 4 episodes do for you that years of working at startups and VCs didn't?
So, funny story about the podcast. That's probably what got me the job at Aurora, is the day because they wanted someone, like InDrive is a very purpose driven business, and they wanted to see that you live that purpose. And the day was my case study of this concept of building infrastructure for women. So the day I was born out of me not feeling purpose in my job. And so I was like, and I had this thing where I was speaking to women, and the whole thesis of the podcast was if she can do it, I can do it. I don't believe your day has to be like, oh, I became CFO at Google, or oh, I climbed Everest. Or I think your day can be super simple, right? The day I broke up with my ex, the day I cut my hair, like the day, and I think it's stuff that only women understand, which is that some of your biggest achievements come from your smallest moments, but that are very hard. And I needed to put that energy somewhere. And so with the podcast, what's interesting is like I spent a lot of time speaking to a lot of incredible women, and I really built out my network. And I have like 20 extra episodes on my computer, and I just lost momentum. I just got really, there was a point before I started Aurora where I was just exhausted. I was exhausted with feeling apathetic because I didn't like my job. I was exhausted by not knowing what job I was going to have. I was exhausted by the move that I made to Dubai. And there was some personal things going on as well. And I just couldn't bring myself to sit at my laptop and edit the episodes. I couldn't do it. And I still have. I mean, this has now been almost a year and a half since the last one was recorded and released. And you know what's funny? In my bank account, every month, the subscriptions that go out is Captivate, which is like £20 a month, Dropbox, which has all the episodes, just £10 a month, and I don't think I pay for Riverside anymore. And the reason I don't unsubscribe is because like I'm like, no, like you're gonna get back to it. But it's ridiculous. I've paid both of those companies like hundreds of pounds over 2 years. I've never used them. And a lot of my friends say
come back and start posting. But...
Exactly. And I think I've only recently, literally in the last month or two, got back the fervor to do it. The difficulty I have now is like I recorded those episodes 2 years ago. It's kind of weird to go back, as you know, to your guests and be like, hey, I'm thinking of releasing. Yeah. All I can do is be honest and be like, look, like these are the things that happened. It is an excuse, but it's also not an excuse. If you're happy for me to release, I would love that. But if not, I understand. Because I believe in the day and it's something that it's like, if you were to tell me what's like a regret that you have, I don't regret it because I know why I didn't do it. But like, it's something that all of my friends, okay, like those 4 episodes, the growth we saw was just unreal because it hit a nerve. And so at least once a day I think about it and I'm like, you need to pull this up. So watch out for Q1. But to answer your first question, is what's funny is 4 episodes, and that's what got me this job. Can you imagine 4 episodes versus a 10-year career? And that is what skewed them to give me this job. So all this to say to anyone listening, I did not succeed that podcast. Like if anything, I really did not, I unsucceeded it, but thank God I did it because I wouldn't have gotten this job. So, you know, life, right?
So now that you've reviewed thousands of these applications, like what tells you in the first 30 seconds that someone has a shot of making it in the top 3%? And on the flip side, what makes you mentally check out like the second you open it?
I'm still figuring this out, to be honest. Aurora's founder thesis is ever constantly in development because the founders that we back, it doesn't match exactly with what traditional venture capital perceives as a great founder, right? Not because they're not venture backable, but because VC generally prescribes itself to very set metrics of growth, which don't take into account like the reality of building in Nigeria or the reality of tackling a niche. And does that mean that these businesses are not good? No, it just means they're not going to be unicorns, but that doesn't mean they're not very exitable businesses. So for me, at this point in time, my question that I'm thinking about is how quickly did you go from the idea to your first dollar in revenue? So I'm not interested. If you haven't made money from what you're doing, I'm not interested. But if you took this idea and you made money and now you're self-sustaining yourself through your business and you haven't raised anything, then the second question is, okay, how did you take that product market fit and how quickly did you grow it? I think sometimes we fall into the trap of looking at absolute numbers, total revenue, total users. Okay, but how many of those users are still there? How many of them actively use your product? How many of them have churned? It's my more interesting to me is like, how quickly did you grow? How quickly are you getting referrals? Like, what is your customer loyalty, right? Which might mean you have smaller top numbers, but the core is there. And then in terms of the personality of our founders, I definitely think there is an Aurora personality. Like when we had our final last year in Cairo and we brought 10 founders from a different country, and we're talking Colombia, Nigeria, French Polynesia. What was so interesting to me was I thought the benefit of them being there would be the event and the PR and all these things. The benefit was them meeting each other. Like they just gelled, which is not a given. Like it's not, oh, we're 10 female founders, we're going to be friends. Nah, they just gelled because of this, like, I'm going to do this thing. And in totally different industries. And all of them had like not really raised any money, like had businesses that were profitable, which, let's be real, most venture-backed businesses are not profitable and actually burn a lot of cash. These women didn't have that luxury or had very little cash injected, and were all building with purpose. Every single one of them, there was a reason. And I was told this thing once by an investor, that being a good founder is not about caring more, it's about wanting to win. You have to want to win more than the other guy. I disagree with that. Like, I think caring, like, sure, maybe some people are motivated by money, whatever, fine, each their own. But the thing about every Aurora founder is there's a reason they're building this business. There is a purpose behind it. And that is what gets them through the days. And if I don't see that, if I don't see you believe in this, you care, I don't think, maybe you're a fit for another fund, but I don't think you're a fit for us. Because we're working as a mother with 2 kids, part-time, whilst also building, like, also having a full-time job on your business, that you don't do that for the sake of winning. You do that because you have deep passion for this. So that's kind of where we're getting to, but definitely watch this space, because we do want to come up with like a much more data-driven, really in research perception of what an Aurora founder is and what a great founder in these emerging markets is from our perspective and based on our data. But obviously we're quite early in the game, and so I think this year will be really interesting to have a more unbiased view, you could say, of that statement.
So while seeing these founders like in person, we've also traveled across like 3 continents doing this, right? So out of all these conversations, is there like person, like a story or a moment that completely rewired how you think about like what's possible? And like, how was that person? Was she old, young? Like, what made her special?
So it's a good question. I think when we went to Colombia earlier in 2025, end of 2025, this was the first time that Colombia Tech Week was hosting an all-female founder pitch, which really surprised me because the Colombian tech ecosystem is strong. And like the female founders there are strong. And so we hosted this pitch and it was super well attended. And our judges were ridiculous. Like we had the editor of Forbes, we had major VCs, like our head of partnerships, Jorge, did an incredible job getting these people in. And what was mad was like we had 10 finalists. Every single one of those companies, I was like, the level is unreal. Like the level is unreal. And all of these companies really hit this thesis of like big business can be good business. You can do good for the world and be very commercially viable. Like there doesn't need to be a trade-off. And I think to have seen all of these women like had these ideas, made them like profitable, scalable. And the fact that they then said to me, oh, this is the first time, or like not the first time, but like it's super rare that you have an all-female founding pitch lineup. I was like, I think it made me realize what we're doing matters. I sometimes think, who are we? Who is Aurora to go to Colombia, to go to Egypt, to be like, oh, we're for female founders? Like, surely, like, there are others, right? Who are we to think that we deserve to have the best founders? And I think the answer to that is actually there, to my surprise, there isn't that much. And so when you come to these founders and you tell them, look, like, we back the bold, like what you're doing, like who you are, we're not backing you because it's nice, you're a woman, we're backing you because you're a badass. They resonate. And it's funny because I had a conversation with one of the founders of Colombia Tech Week right before my Christmas break. So we're talking like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And she messaged me on Instagram. She's like, I want to talk. I was thinking, okay. And she said, Bella, she's like, I love what you're building. She's like, we've seen a lot of things like this come through, and all the female founders that I know are talking about Aurora. And I was so surprised because I'm thinking, but like, we haven't even spent that much time in Colombia. She's like, you do it differently. The brand, how you tell the stories. Like, and then I met a Mexican founder who said the exact same thing. And I've been telling the team for the last 2 weeks, I was like, our market penetration is a lot deeper than we thought it was. And the brand that we're building, right? Like, to be an Aurora founder, for it to mean something, it's working. I don't like, and that's crazy to me. And so that there's been a few moments like that it reminds me like, wow, like this is why we're pushing. This is why we do what we do. Because it's easy to forget, like between Zoom meetings and airports, and like it's easy to be like, man, like, is this worth it? Like, as in, are we actually achieving anything? So yeah.
One thing you said before, and that's like really stuck with me, is the idea that if the table isn't built for you, you build your own seat. So I have to ask, what's this table you're building now that nobody sees yet?
Yeah, that metaphor is like the cornerstone of Aurora, and it's something I just like have been saying for years. If the table isn't built for you, build your own table or pull up a seat. So what does that mean? Right now, as you mentioned with your statistics at the beginning of this episode, let's say the table of venture capital is not super well built for women, right? It's like, one, there's not a lot of seats for you, right? Because of that 2% metric, right? Which has been going on now, but from 2018 to 2025, that metric has not improved. So there's not that many seats, let's say, of funding for women. So it's like, okay, cool. But then if you get a seat at that table, right, if you make it there, it's freaking uncomfortable. It's not made for you. Like, you get asked different questions. Like, it's a bit awkward. You're the only person in the room. It's like, so you can either, and I have respect for both approaches, you can fight to get more seats at that table. You can fight for that. And a lot of people are doing that in becoming CEO of FTSE 100 companies and, sticking it through, like working their way up. Like, I think Sheryl Sandberg is a really good example of that. Or, in my opinion, the more non-soul destroying way is to build your own table, right? Build a new standard. Be like, you guys can be over there, cool for you, but like, we're going to do our own thing. And if you want to join, you can. And what I mean by that is, with Aurora, we're building capital around the thesis of female founders rather than trying to fit them into the current consensus of what a good founder is. We are working with investors that understand this opportunity and want to be part of this asset class. We are understanding that women build differently to men. We experience the world differently. Naturally, we build for different businesses, for different problems, with different approaches. I'm not saying they can't be merged, but I'm saying that this whole growth at all costs and like break things and move fast, is that really working? Like, if we look at like the performance of most funds, like, is that really working? Like, is there not maybe some merit to building a little bit slower, but like not churning all of your customers and actually having some robust structure? When you look at the data, the cycle of boom and busts in women that pass the Series A phase, so massive hiring and massive firing, is grossly less than men. And it's because women are more measured in how they build businesses. Does that mean they build a bit slower? Perhaps. Is that wrong? No. And so that is the table that we are building. And we do that so that our founders can go and build their own tables. Build their tables in fintech for farmers in Africa. Build their tables in healthcare for women in Colombia. And we are generating this effect of, if she can do it, I can do it. And so that's where that metaphor came from, because I'm so tired of people being like, oh, the table isn't built for me. Like, oh, it's so hard. No, just go build your own table. Like, in the world today, it's so accessible to build, and it makes you powerful versus powerless.
That was a great response. Thank you so much, Isabella. For our last question, it's about teenagers, as we have a lot of them listening to this. So if there was one thing you want them to take away from this conversation, one thing you wish someone had told you at my age, what would it be?
I think, ask yourself. So the question that I wish I'd been asked, that I was never asked, despite having very empowering parents, was, what are you actually good at? Like, if I was to put you, Rayanne, at a dinner table with a complete stranger tomorrow night, like, what's the value you will give them, right? For me, again, like, people can disagree, it's being able to make someone leave that dinner happier than they entered it, more confident. That's why I'm good at managing teams. Like, I think all of my team members will agree with you. I am horrendous at Excel, but I back them, and that allows them to be good at what they do. It's the reason that I can go on stage and be the cheerleader for our founders. There's a lot of things I'm not good at, but what I'm naturally very good at is people. Nobody asked me that growing up. Like, what do you care about? What are you naturally good at? Like, and I think as a teenager now, the way I read this book, and it said there's your areas of incompetence, which is stuff you're shit at. For me, that's maths. I've given up. I'm not going to spend time trying. I have people for that. Then there's your areas of like averageness, like, we all have personal admin, all these things. And then there's your area of excellence, which is maybe something that you get paid for, that you're good at, right? Like, I could be head of marketing if I wanted to. I wouldn't be the best, but I'd be pretty good. And then there's your areas of genius, and that's what comes naturally to you. Like, what naturally comes to you, you don't even think about. You're just good at it. And I wish someone had asked me earlier, what is that, and lean into that a bit sooner than I have, because, I really only leaned into that at the age of 26. And I think it's because we don't get asked at school, like, what do you actually want to do? Or what do you actually like? And so my advice is think about it, pay attention to that, and try and lean into jobs that are not making you do things that you have to really like not be naturally good at, because it's exhausting. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Isabella, for this lovely episode. It was so insightful, and I honestly love how it went. It was so casual and it was super natural. So, what really stuck with me is how these small moments were the ones that really changed everything for you. A podcast you didn't start, almost didn't start, landed you your dream job. A rejection from your boss led you to double your salary. And this belief you keep coming back to, that if the table isn't built for you, you build your own. Like, that's what got you from law to running a global award program in Dubai. Isabella isn't Gen Z, but she's built her career the way a Gen Z would, by trusting her gut, building in public, and refusing to wait for permission. And now she's a person deciding which founders in emerging markets get backed and which ones don't. And a lot of them are your age. None of this was planned, but it was all definitely earned. So if you got something from today, make sure to pass it on to a family or friend, and I'll see you in the next week.